Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my Formula One Miami Grand Prix power rankings. So of course for these rankings I only look at the last 4 races, so that's why some of the results, especially those from Bahrain, won't be taken into consideration this week. So starting right away, number 20, Nick DeVries. So finally out-qualified his teammate Yuki Tsunoda this race, but had a pretty poor race I thought. Had that incident in the first lap where he kind of locked up and kind of went into the back of Norris. The rest of the race was pretty forgettable though, and I think, he has to be consistently much closer, I think, to Tsunoda in the races in order to kind of maintain his seat and maybe have the possibility of having a seat in Formula One next year. Number 19, same spot as last race, is Logan Sargent. So for Sargent, another pretty poor scruffy weekend. He qualified 20th, and in the race I think he had some contact on the opening laps and had to come in for a front wing change. His race was basically done, and he was well off the back of the rest of the cars for the rest of the race from there. Number 18, same spot as last race, but a much better weekend overall, I thought, was Valtteri Bottas. So for Bottas, he did out-qualify and out-race Zhou, but still, I thought not particularly fantastic overall. But that being said, I think the Alfa Romeo, the race pace is not really on a comparable with many of the cars around it. Maybe the AlphaTauri, but still a pretty poor car in the races, I think. Number 17, dropping 3 spots from last race, is Nico Hülkenberg. So with Hülkenberg, I think he had a pretty challenging weekend. I think he was out-qualified by Magnussen by quite a bit, and then in the race was not much better. Had a good couple of battles in the midfield, but then again, no points as well. And I think Magnussen looked significantly more comfortable this weekend. Number 16, one of the first 2 big drops of the weekend, is Lance Stroll. So for Stroll, I think an absolutely awful weekend, quite frankly. He qualified 18th while his teammate qualified 2nd. Obviously, I know there were circumstances surrounding that, but still in the race, I think I expected him to cut his way through the field much more easily than he did, and he ended up basically just getting stuck in trains, DRS trains, and not really making the most out of the advantage of his car. Number 15, also dropping 6 spots, is Alex Albon. So for Albon, it's less about him being bad. I think it's just that the Williams has not been great the last couple of races, and he has had some mistakes, like in Australia, which I think has brought his rating down. But I think for the most part, he's still beating Sargent. He's still been solid. I think it's just that the Williams has a really good car in a straight line, which I think makes it look a little better than it is. And I think it kind of helps keep him in these battles when maybe he or the car shouldn't be in those battles. Number 14, dropping 2 positions, is Zhou Guanyu. So for Zhou, a bit of a tough weekend, qualified and outraced by Bottas. But overall, I think for the last couple of races, he's been very solid and looked very good. And that's kind of what you want to see if you want to see progress, solid progress from him compared to last year. Number 13, moving up 2 spots, I think a much better weekend overall, was Carlos Sainz. So for Carlos, I think he had a much better qualifying. Of course, out-qualified his teammate Leclerc and also out-raced him as well. So that's kind of the first weekend, I think, all season where he's looked better than his teammate. I guess Australia as well. But I know Leclerc basically DNF'd on lap 1, so it was really hard to make a comparison there. But overall, I thought Sainz looked much better this weekend, so as a result, he starts moving up my power rankings. Number 13, number 12, moving up 1 spot, is Pierre Gasly. So for Gasly, a really solid race overall. I think he got solid points. I think finished P8, best of the rest. So that's a really great haul of points for him and for Alpine. I think he made really good use of the strategy. Even though he pit really early, he managed to get the hard tires to last for a very long time and was rewarded with some good points. Number 11, moving up 6 places, one of my drivers of the weekend, is Kevin Magnussen. So for Magnussen, a fantastic qualifying, qualified 4th yesterday in the Haas, and then today finishes 10th. I think the Haas, they had really good pace early on, but I think they chewed through their tires very quickly. And I think we saw that with both him and Magnussen kind of dropping through the order. And he was having a lot of really good battles with Leclerc in the Ferrari. So it's great to see that he was able to somehow match Leclerc's Ferrari on pace in the early part of the race. Number 10, Oscar Piastri. So for Piastri, I think he's had a pretty solid start to his career. I think this weekend was a bit tough though. It's obviously his very first time driving at Miami, but nonetheless, I think the last 4 races have been really solid overall for Piastri. And number 9, moving up 7 spots, I think the biggest mover is Esteban Ocon. So for Ocon, I think, remember, if we're looking at only the last 4 races, that takes out his result from Bahrain, which is absolutely awful for him. Remember, he got like a minute worth of penalties, which is why he has moved up so much. I think for Ocon, pretty good. I think he managed to make the alternate strategy work and managed to get some points on the board. Of course, he'd be a bit disappointed to be behind his teammate Gasly, but nonetheless pretty solid overall for Ocon. Number 8, moving down 3 positions, is Charles Leclerc. That big mistake in Q3, which is of course preceded by him getting that lockup at the last corner, and which ruined his first lap in Q3. Today, I'm not really sure what happened. The pace was pretty poor overall, and he was routinely fighting with cars that were much slower than him, and I think he should have been ahead. Of course, he also lost out to Hamilton at the end as well, so not great for Leclerc, so he moves down 3 positions. Number 7, moving at 1 position, is Lando Norris. So for Norris, I think he's gotten the most out of the car. I think the McLaren really struggled today. But he out-qualified Piastri, outraced Piastri. I think he probably would have liked to be a bit higher, but I think it's really, the McLaren was really, really poor today. So it's hard to say. Number 6, in the same position as last race, is Yuki Tsunoda. So for Tsunoda, another pretty solid race, unfortunately for him, finishing P11 again. But I think after a pretty rough qualifying, where he got out-qualified for the first time by De Vries, he made a really good start, and his pace looked really good, and he was battling with cars that I think were much faster than him, and he even finished ahead of Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. So really solid start to the season, I think, so far for Tsunoda. Number 5, dropping 1 position from last race, is Lewis Hamilton. So for Hamilton, a bit of a rough qualified 13th. Did manage to make his way through the field, but still, that qualifying really hurt him, I think, with his chances in the race. I think he could have finished 4th or 5th had he qualified in kind of the middle of the top 10. Number 4, moving up 3 positions, is George Russell. So for George, I think really fantastic race overall. Qualified 6th, I believe, and then finished 4th. Yeah, so finished basically second behind Alonso. And I thought he had a really solid race, really calculated with his overtakes, and he made some really good moves right after he switched onto the hard tires. So overall, really solid race for George. Number 3, and then we get to the top 3, which we'll see what the order is. But first, number 3, staying in the same position, is Sergio Perez. So for Perez, obviously got that really good lap, the first lap in Q3, which got him on pole, and then I think maybe he was a bit fortunate that no one really was able to set their second lap time, so of course he got pole, which of course should have given him a really big buffer ahead of Verstappen that I think he probably should have won the race, given that Verstappen was starting so far back. But regardless, I think the pace was okay, and it was kind of about what you would expect for Perez. Not fantastic, but not terrible either. Number 2, same position as last week, is Max Verstappen. So I think for Verstappen, really excellent race. The race pace and the race was absolutely fantastic, but I think you have to remember that he did kind of put himself in that position with his aborted first lap in Q3, and which is why he started so far down. If he had some kind of mechanical issue that had caused him to be that far down, maybe he would be number 1 on my power ranking this week, but I think the race overall was really good, and he really executed the alternative strategy, starting on the hards and then switching to the mediums really, really well. And he was able to get that really decisive overtake on Perez as well in the closing laps. So number 1 on my power ranking, the same spot as last race, is Fernando Alonso. So for Alonso, really fantastic race overall, I thought. Basically completely squelched his teammate Stroll in both qualifying and the race, and was able to be the best of that Aston, Ferrari, Mercedes battle, and finishing 3rd on the podium. So 4th podium in 5 races for Alonso, so absolutely fantastic for him. I think he's going to be very pleased, and he's really carrying Aston Martin in the Constructors' Championship. So that's all for my Miami Grand Prix power rankings. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.